I'm here to educate, I'm here to share different things that we can maybe take on board and adapt in our own lives, particularly and specifically within the area of children and money. Now this, although it wasn't advertised in this way, this particular talk, we in Mesila call it Don't Just Say No. And really what we're trying to achieve is we have a tendency, and it's quite normal and quite natural, to just say no. And the question is, how do we say other things besides no, and how do we educate our children in a different way, not just to say no, and we'll see different strategies of how to do it. There are a few trigger videos that I have, so that way you won't have to listen to me the whole time, which is also quite helpful. But ultimately, money, whether we like it or not, is very much part of our lives. Most people do like it in one way, shape or form, and that's maybe some of the challenge and some of the issues, that we like it a bit too much. But that's not what I'm here to discuss at this today, but rather try to see what we want to get to a point is try to relate to money in a very technical, unemotional way. And look at it in a way that it's not the be-all and end-all of what we are and what we do. It doesn't define who we are, but it's a technicality. It's something that happens to be part of our lives, that we need to do, need to use it, we need to spend it, we need to do lots of different things. But how can we do it in a healthy way, and in a very practical way, and in a mature way that removes the emotional baggage as much as we can? So there's a very famous story, you may be well aware of it, that the Dessler family, Rav Dessler, to this day have a suitcase. They keep in their family a suitcase that's been passed down ever since the Bolshevik Revolution of 1918. And in this suitcase is full of... Anybody know the story? No, so this is my test to see who knows the story or not. Right? It's full of bills, money. Full of bills. Why would any family hand down a suitcase full of bills? Well, the story behind this particular suitcase is that Rav Eliyahu Dessler, his father, Rav Reuven Dov Dessler, was a very wealthy timber merchant, as well as a tremendous Baal Mussar, which is hence, Rav Dessler had already a chinuch from home with this. It didn't just start suddenly. And with the instability that was rocking Russia at the time, so Rav Reuven Dov turned all his assets into cash and put it in a suitcase to protect the financial well-being of his family. But then, one of the first things the Bolsheviks did was to cancel all old currency, which rendered their money overnight completely worthless. They had an entire and they were poverty-stricken. When they were poverty-stricken, they didn't have any. They weren't able to use it. And what they did is they kept this suitcase to remind them and everybody else as well, us as well, how worthless money really can be. And the only real worth of money, and what they wanted to reinforce and to remind ourselves, is really what it can accomplish. If it can't accomplish anything, then it's not worth anything, etc., etc. And ultimately what we need to be able to do is to use it where we can and when we have the opportunity as a tool for serving Hashem and for being a good person. So that wouldn't surprise you coming from Baalei Mussar like the Dessler family. So we all know that money isn't the key to happiness, and we all know that the more we have, the more that we have, and the more we want. Yesh lemana ratzon masayim. We're very familiar with those particular expressions and that particular attitude, and we've all heard, I'm sure, statistics about that there's a zero correlation between happiness and lots of money. Necessarily. By the way, you might want to look up a 2008, so a while ago, but it's still relevant. 2008 article in Science magazine that spending on yourself doesn't make you happy, but what they do say is that spending on others sure does. So we just need to bear that in mind when we talk about spending money and a zero correlation between the spending of money and having a lot of money and happiness as well. So looking around the world, we see that lots of people, although we know this and we can talk about it, and most people, if you discuss it with them, are not going to argue with you necessarily very much. But at the same time, if you look at the Moach and the Leiv, there's two very different worlds. In our head we know this, but somehow, if you look around the world, it doesn't seem to be that that's translating into the way people, and the way sometimes we are overly obsessed with money in ways that won't get us happiness, and in the way that we're looking for necessarily, in a very real, meaningful way. And if that's true with adults, it's certainly true with kids. And that's really where we're going to start looking at today and this morning, in the time that we have, children and money. Because ultimately, if we want our kids to grow up with the right attitudes towards money, we need to teach them in three ways: by explaining, by experience, and by example. So we explain first of all the right way to deal with money and how careful we must be with other people's money and possessions, and how to do mitzvahs with money. What is our responsibility? We have a responsibility when it comes to money. So that's in terms of the explaining. But then also, we need to enable them to experience it. Explaining it is not good enough. We need to then go to the next level and enable them to experience how to, how to handle money properly when it comes to saving it, when it comes to spending it, using allowance, giving maisa, earning, all the different things. We need to actually give them a way to be able to experience it in a healthy way. And that's part of what I'm going to share with you, is the different strategies to be able to do this. And ultimately, we need to set an example. Because we can explain all we like, and we can give them all the experiences in the world, but if we're, coming home from shul talking about what everybody's wearing, men or women for that matter, where the women talk about what the women are wearing or what the men are talking about, then it's not going to work. We can explain, but if we don't show, we're not a dugma chaim, we don't live by that example, and what we are interested in is how much things cost and what brand people are wearing and what the latest fashions are, then it's not going to help with the children, however much we want to try and explain to them, and however much we want to give them the experiences of being able to have a healthy attitude towards money, and certainly from a Torah Hashkafa perspective. So as I said earlier, Mesila is an organization that teaches people, children and adults, how to deal with money in a way that contributes to our well-being, and because we firmly believe and experience and know from the engagement we have with families and the coaching that we do, that and everybody really knows this, that financial stress impacts on every single area of our lives. It affects relationships, it affects mental health, it affects physical health, it affects relationships between couples, relationships with children. The tension there is not just about finances. If there's tension of finances, then it will spread everywhere else as well. And we want to try and have a healthy approach to money, because if we do, then Be'ezus Hashem will have a healthier life, as I say, emotionally and physically. We teach financial literacy, and we encourage people to have financial independence and to have the healthy attitudes that will enable financial stability. And that means ultimately that money will take its rightful place. It's not ignored. We don't see it as like an evil, it's something that's evil or anything like that. We know that Torah doesn't. So if Torah doesn't, so therefore we don't. But we need to be able to, and money is important. We can't live without it. There's no question about that. But we also can't, what we try and do is ensure that we're not worshipping money, and that we are dictating to the money as opposed to the money dictating to us. And we see it, as I say, just a necessity. Certain things we need to have. We need to have, safety pins sometimes. So if we need more safety pins, we go and buy more safety pins. Again, just see it in a way that's a technical necessity, worth getting more if we need it, and then coming up with a solution if we don't have enough. Right? That's what we want to do. And we call this series "Don't Just Say No" in this presentation, and we'll focus today. There's lots of areas we can talk about, and I've touched on some of them, but I'm going to try and focus now on how parents can convey the right attitudes about money to their children without having to say no, no, no the whole time. Now, money habits don't begin and end with the state of our bank account. We know that. It's not just about finances. Adam, Nikar, Bekisai, well, three things, but one of them, as you know, is Bekisai. We can tell a lot about a person with the way in which they deal with money, what they spend their money on, how they deal with money is Adam Nikar Bekisai. And we will learn today 6 tools that have to do with how we can, and strategies and tools that we can engage with our children in terms of having a healthy attitude towards money. And the secret here, which you may have figured out already, is that we're not just teaching our children, ultimately we're teaching ourselves. And it all starts with us. If we model these strategies, then we've got half a chance of imparting them and sharing them with our children to be able to grow up in a way that we want them to have, as I say, a healthy attitude towards money. Let's just have a look at here. Give me a chance to pause.
I don't know about you guys, but until very recently, my wife and I were locking horns with our kids over money matters just about every single day. It was the same refrain, over and over.
Mommy, honey, will your kids have it?
You promised. It's on sale.
No. No! That's all I was saying, day in and day out. Didn't do much for our relationship, as you can imagine. Didn't work either. And besides, I didn't want money to be such a focal point. I was at my wit's end. But guess what? Kids can learn about money and how to use it without confrontations and without frustration. Why don't you just step right in and join me while I show you how I almost deleted no from my dictionary and lived to tell about it.
Okay, so as I said earlier, the title of this is Don't Just Say No, because as the father in the cartoon said, as parents we find ourselves using that two-letter word probably more often than we would like to, but we don't really have alternatives and we don't always necessarily know what to do other than just saying no. And it's not just with money. You know, it's true for ultimately the tools that I'm sharing here are not exclusive to money. It's just we're applying them to money, but you can apply them really to many areas of parenting and many areas of life as well. And what we need to do is try to ensure that we are effective in getting messages across, and not just by saying no. So the question is, how will we teach it to them? What are we going to do? If we do it only by saying no, 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 don't do this, don't do that, etc., then that's not the way to act. Then we might get cooperation in that moment in time, but that's not chinuch. We're not going to educate them in the long run and for themselves. And also, equally crucial is what effect is that going to have on the relationship and our relationship with our children. So, what do we do instead? Is the alternative okay? So we don't say no. So then we let them just have whatever they want, right? That's also not what that's not what we're trying to hear. What we're going to hear to learn. So our goal is to gradually get them to do the right thing on their own. That's ultimately what we're trying to achieve over here, and that's the gist of these strategies and these tools that we're going to go into in a moment, is to help us find alternatives to really instill the values and instill the guidelines and the constraints that we want our children to have. And the reason why we're saying no is because we feel that it's a no, but then there's lots of different reasons what are the backgrounds to the no, and try and understand that for ourselves, and then be able to share that with our children, to be able to help them have a different approach, and to be able ultimately for them to say no to themselves. That's really where we're trying to get. If we can communicate with them in such a way that they won't hear no from us, but they understand from what we're saying that this is not the right thing to do, or there may be an alternative, and they say it to themselves, that's the ultimate. Because they're making that choice, and then it's more effective. It also is more effective on our relationship with them, and it's more effective in the long term in terms of the chinuch and what's likely to happen later on in their lives. Okay, so the first thing in the foundation is, we'll see the first cartoon. Without the intro, you did the intro. I did the intro already. See one no intro. There we go.
Giving kids the opportunity to make independent money decisions can give them a whole new perspective. How did I get this job again? Shopping with Shimmy for school supplies? Last year was such a nightmare. Well, at least this time, we did our homework and have some idea of the basic costs involved. Let's see if this new system will work.
Boy, do I need a lot of stuff, Abba. Notebooks and loose leaves and markers and a pencil case. Me too. No, you don't, Dopey. You just need a lunchbox and crayons.
Jimmy, this year, you can decide what to buy.
Really? Whatever I want?
Well, everything you need, and even some extras, as long as you have enough money. Emma figured out that a basic set of school supplies costs about $50. I'm giving you $65 and a list. You decide whether you want plain pencils and a fancy set of markers, or plain markers and a cool notebook. It's your call.
$65? That's a ton of money. Yeah, rich!
Look at that. You set up a situation to avoid confrontation and having to say no all the time. And the real plus is that Shimmy is developing financial awareness by having to make his own decisions within his spending limit.
Okay, so very cute, I hope. To what extent is it practical? So interestingly, this first strategy in terms of limited or structured independence or limited autonomy is something that we are very, as Yidden and from Yidden, we're very, very familiar with. Because that's how our whole lives run, right? Halacha is run on that basis. We are told that we have within certain constraints, we can do certain things, and we can't do other things. So it's something that it's already part of our lives, it's already part of this life, their lives, and we're taking that principle and applying it in, to this particular area in terms of dealing with money. So for example, we have free choice. We have bechira, we have free choice, but does that mean we can do absolutely anything we want from a Yiddishkeit point of view? No. There are certain limitations that halacha and Torah puts on us to be able to do or not do certain things. Right? We, within halachically acceptable boundaries, we have free choice to earn money. Right, to earn whatever we want to do. Can we, when we can choose our occupation and we can choose how much time we spend on it, and how much tzedakah we want to give, and so on. But at the same time, there are boundaries. It's not completely that we can earn however we want to earn our money. There are certain things we're not allowed to do. So we see that again and again, whether it's with Shabbat, in every area of our Jewish life. One of the examples I like to compare it to is like a pizza pie. So we have our pizza pie, and we can decide, which toppings to have in it. We can decide how to cut it up and which proportion. But that's all we have, right? I can't go, if I want more, I can't go and take my neighbor's pizza because that's not mine. The reality is this is the amount we have, and therefore within the constraints of this is the pie that I have, how am I going to slice it? That you can give them independence and to be able to choose whatever they want to do depending on the circumstances. And it's really about introducing kids to budgeting, and that's actually what budgeting is all about. Whether it's dealing with money, whether it's dealing with time, whether it's dealing with energy, right? That we have a limited resource. We have a limited amount of each of these things, and that's for our pizza, our pie. And what we want to try and do is we have autonomy to decide how to use our resources within the limited boundaries. In our, I mentioned earlier, we have education curriculums. We have a junior high school, we have high school curriculum. In our junior high school, we have a very cool activity there. It's very fun for the kids, where they simulate going to an amusement park for 3 hours, and there's a chart showing how long you have to wait for each of the attractions and how long the ride actually is. And they have to work out together to decide how they want to budget and how they want to use their 3 hours. Do they wait an hour and then go on for a chance to go on the big roller coaster, or do they go to the bumper cars and then that's only 10 minutes online? And the concept there is about limited resources and deciding how to use them. And as that sinks in, then we're ready to apply that to budgeting money as well. And you'll find many opportunities to be able to do this, and low tension opportunities to be able to give them, say, okay, this is your resource, this is what you have, you choose. Right, so and you can try this. You're gonna, whether it's buying candy for, I'm English, but I'm getting there. For translators, I'm going along. But you buy candy for Shabbat or whatever it may be. If there's an opportunity that there needs to be, and you can send them and say, okay, this is the amount of money. And then when they call you and they say, can I just buy the sour sticks for another $2? It's only another $2, right? Out of however much you're going to give them, whatever it is, say you're going to give them $20. I'm just making it right. I use round numbers. And they say it's only another $2. Doesn't seem like such a huge amount of money in the scheme of things, right? So, what are you going to see? You can either say no, or you can say yes, or you can say, based on this resource, this strategy that we're just learning about now, what could you say instead? Not a trick question.
Make some space for the sour sticks in your
right. You say yes with pleasure, but you need to cut something else out. If that's really what you want to buy, the sour sticks, gesund to hate. But then what else are you going to give up instead? And then they start getting in a sense, and you'll soon see right where they come up with it. Then they can make their choices, but you haven't spent more than the $20. You also haven't said no. You've said yes, but, and you've given them, you've empowered them to be able to make those choices, make those decisions, without actually affecting your pocket and affecting your relationship, and without having to say the word no to them at all. So it's a way in which you can do it, and there's many, many different times and many, many different ways that you could do it. As I say, this is a strategy that if they get used to this, that you can apply with them, not just to money, you can apply it to time, and you can apply it to energy, and you can apply it to so many different things in our relationship with our children from a parenting perspective. In this case, we've just applied it to the concept of money and the concept of autonomy within boundaries, which, as I say, is a tool for life. Some parents may think, well, limiting children, you're taking away their childhood and their carefree life and so on and so forth. But the reality is any parenting expert, which I'm not, will tell you is that kids crave boundaries. They might try and push the boundaries, they might kick against them, but ultimately what's the healthiest thing for children is to have structure and is to have boundaries. And it's not just about saying yes completely, and it's not about saying always no, because as we know from Avram and we know from Yitzchak, chesed, which is Avram, to the extreme can ruin a child, and you can have from there a Yishmael, and from Yitzchak, Gevurah, which is no to the extreme, is also not the Chas v'Shalom I'm judging or criticizing the others. That's not what I'm doing. But you understand the principle. Chazal talk about this, all right? And therefore you can have a Esav that comes from that as well. What you need is a Yaakov the Tiferet, is a way in which you can do it in a beautiful way, still say the same things, but in a different way. That's one strategy that we have, as to be able to give them structure, which is what they crave, and what they need, and what they will thrive on, but in a way that still doesn't affect the end result, which is the point that you're doing, which is the limited resources that you have, and therefore they have. Let's go to the next one.
Every adult knows that some purchases take priority over others, but your kids will only learn that rule by applying it themselves.
Abba, can I use your phone? $10, another $6. No, I won't have enough for the fancy notebooks. Unless I use my pencil case from last year. It's in decent condition. I think it's a good trade-off. New pencil case out, cool notebooks in.
That's terrific, Shimmy. You just made a great discovery. You'll always have everything you need, but only some of what you want.
Wow! Look at this great stencil set. Get that, Shimmy, even if it means you have to buy the plain markers. Can I, Abba?
Take a look. Is it on the list?
Nope. It's not on the list. We're not buying it today, Dovey. Hey, Shimmy, I have an idea. Just buy everything you want and pay with a credit card, like Abba does. It's a mitzvah, because you'll get points. Hey, don't you get it, Dovey? This is all the money I have to spend. I decide what's important to me, and when I dish out the last $1, that's it. Money doesn't grow on trees, you know. I'm not a baby, okay? I know money doesn't grow on trees. It comes from an ATM machine.
Did you see that? Not only didn't I have to say no, Shimmy said no to himself. He decided what takes priority and how to distinguish between his needs and wants. Instead of a confrontation, I let a preset budget and list do the job. If it's not on the list, it doesn't exist. Shimmy learned that every opportunity comes with a price. And when we say yes to one thing, we're saying no to something else. Isn't that what life's all about?
So again, similar idea. It's about life skills, life tools, and applying them. Things we'll be familiar with applying them to money. We conveyed in the first strategy, the first tool, the idea of that resources are limited and choices have to be made. So therefore, we need to make a choice. We need to sometimes prioritize. But what takes precedence? And here we come to one of Mesila's mantras, something that we repeat again and again and again, and we encourage everybody to repeat again and again with their children. You heard it in there, and that is that you'll always tell your children. You'll have, and make sure, not only you're telling them, it's because this is what we're doing, that you'll have everything you need and some of what you want. That's what, and in our coaching, when we sit with families, that's really where we're trying to get to. We're trying to say, we want to enable you and help you to be able to have everything you need and some of what you want. Now, the sum will be, you have to prioritize. What are going to be the sum? And also, this comes to another part of how do you define a need and how do you define a want? Okay, so if you have everything you need and some of what you want, well, who's going to say what's a need and who's going to say what's a want? And that's really, and because of changing standards, that's, years ago, I'm not going to speak too much about previously, but it was very clear what the minimum standard was and the minimum needs were, and it was clear that only affluent people, certain people had the extra, so to speak, but the reality is that now everyone has whatever it may be, translate it in your own areas, in your own lives. Whether it's everyone goes on vacation, or everyone goes to camp, and everyone has 2 cars, everyone has 2 push-ups, and everyone has, it's just, there isn't that same understanding that there is like a minimum that we have. And so what do we do? How do we determine the things that are a need and the things that are a want? Sometimes they're objective, sometimes they're subjective. If you're living in a place where 90% of your if you have daughters, but 90% of your daughter's class are going to learn for in seminary in Eretz Yisrael, well, that suddenly moves from being a want to a need. right? That quite easily. That's like, it's very difficult to see that as a want, and it becomes very quickly as a need, and certainly in the girls' eyes and so on. And so it's very difficult and very challenging. So, and also, as we know, aggressive advertising is also part of it. We and our kids are bombarded by advertising everywhere we are, and it's not easy to resist those sort of open and very often latent messages of prioritizing objectively and how we do that. And we're constantly pressured to buy and to buy and to buy, and you can probably identify with some of these, and I hope you do. So this is what we're up against, but we can deal with it. There are strategies to deal with it. It's not easy. I'm not pretending any of this is necessarily easy, and it takes time to get used to ourselves to be able to do this. But one of the other things that we do is how to determine what is a need and what is a want. Okay? So how would you want to determine what is a need? How do you decide? Time my kid wants something, how do I determine for myself, not necessarily for them for the moment, but let's just do for myself as a parent, how do I determine what is a need generally in life and what is a want? Any suggestions? Okay, so here's
A need is something that they need to survive.
a need is something they need to survive. Okay, yeah, that's very good, absolutely. And one of the ways.
What happens if you don't have it?
What happens if you don't have it? Absolutely. One of the almost, it's not absolutely, but almost foolproof ways of being able to determine and decide and distinguish between what is a need and what is a want is the rule as follows. And that is, if it's a need, it will get stronger. If it's a want, then it eases with time. Right? If you're hungry and you need to eat, the longer you leave it, the hungrier you'll get. If you fancy chocolate, if you move away from the kitchen and then go learn or go to whatever you're doing, you'll forget about it. You'll forget about your need for chocolate. Right? I mean, it's a bit of a silly example. You understand the point that I'm making, and it's almost foolproof. I can't say absolutely foolproof, but if you think about this in your own life, and you think, okay, if a kid needs a pair of shoes, if they need it, that's only going to get stronger. That need's going to get stronger. If the reason they need it is because the shoes don't fit them, that's only going to get worse. Right? If they need it because other kids in their class have those, and therefore they need it, well, not necessarily is that going to get over time. We'll speak about some of those soon. And so that's very, very important to understand the difference and be able to distinguish between what is a need and what is a want, to be able to then prioritize, because we're saying we're going to be able to provide, and we wanted to provide all of the needs and some of the wants, so that's how we go about it. And there are different levels of needs, of course, right? You need shoes, you need oxygen. Right? We need both of those, but there's different levels, and sometimes we get confused by the want element in terms of within the real needs. Okay, so for example, your child really, really needs shoes, right? But not necessarily the very super expensive designer label shoes, and that's what we need to help our children to understand. And when they say, "I need these shoes," they need to be able to say, "I need shoes, and I want those shoes." And they've already distinguished between a need and a want. We agree, absolutely, you need shoes, 100%. And so what we need to do is try to take it to the next level and try and help them with the value of keeping needs and the level of needs down. So we began by speaking about prioritizing for a purely practical reason. Resources are limited, and we have to choose, and how to choose. But sometimes there are other bigger reasons to limit spending and to narrow down the area that we as parents and we want what we want and what we want our children to be able to understand and to have, and what we want them to be able to define as needs, even when money is not an issue. And this is a really, really, really extremely important point, particularly as I say, as Yidden, as from Yidden, this is a very valuable point, and we know, of course, so when our kids learn to be happy, right? When there are when there's a smaller amount, when there are, again, just picking examples, but when there may be 3 noshes at the table and not 10, or they have 2 Yom Tov outfits and not 5. Again, I'm not here to preach, not to anyone, but just illustrating a point that I hope we can all relate to. And it's not about the numbers. The ratios you can put in yourself, but it's the principle. Okay, don't get stuck on the actual numbers. 2 outfits, it doesn't matter. 5 instead of 10, whatever the numbers are. But getting used to less than what they have is what we're ultimately giving them, is the gift of happiness. And as anyone can attest, when we say more just makes you want even more, and every want that is given into ultimately what's going to happen is that's likely going to become a need, and then we're shifting the goalposts, and what is a need, and then the wants become different, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, as we know, we have this principle of dei machzorah, right? We have in tzedakah, dei machzorah, that if a person has fallen from what they had previously, then from a tzedakah perspective, we have to give them dei machzorah, what they were used to having before. And absolutely it's an obligation according to Torah on the giver, but to some extent it's a big rachmanos on the recipient, because a person here cannot manage with the sort of the slave who's running before them. That's the example of dei machzorah. There's also a caveat here that allowing them too little, we can't go to the other extreme, right? Allowing them too little as compared to their peers can also boomerang, and that also will give them a bigger appetite for things that they maybe really need or sometimes they want. So it's a balance. It's a balance, but at least helping them think about in that way and understanding that there is this concept of a need and there is this concept of a want. Because a child who gets everything they want and never develops tools that they need to differentiate and prioritize, will definitely need those tools later in life. There's no question. So to be able to give them these tools already from a younger age, and they won't be able to learn. They won't learn to be, to cope with disappointment. And that's a really important thing. The Stipler Gon, for example, said that so many people today, the reason why so many people today suffer from depression, and it's only got worse since he spoke about it, is because they never lacked anything when growing up and they never developed coping skills. Okay? Don't shoot the messenger. That's what the Stipler said. And so it's very, very important. And he said, therefore, when things later on in life didn't quite work out, they didn't know how to cope and everything fell apart. And we have to think about this in terms of later on in life, not just as an individual, but particularly when our children grow up and they get married, and how that impacts in terms of relationships and marriages and so on and so forth. And ultimately, what we want to say is, it's not the money. Even if I can afford it, I'm still not going to do this, right? Even if I can afford it. And it's important to let our children know that we are limiting ourselves, even if we can afford it. Even if we can afford it, because then they realize that it is a conscious, thought-out decision, and they'll be motivated to view their spending objectively in a very, very different way, rather than sort of putting the blame on their sort of limited spending, on their ineptly economically savvy parents who are inept. They don't know they can't afford it, etc. That's not what we're doing. We need to be able to find opportunities to be able to say to them, I'm making a choice here, that this is not something that I feel that we need, or I feel that we're going to provide, even though it's a want, even though I can afford it. And so let's take an example of how we can help our children, make this very practical and very real, how we can help our children prioritize and distinguish needs from wants. Okay, so for example, Yossi is about to start high school, and he wants an Omega watch. Okay, the Casio watch that he got at 6th grade is just not going to cut it anymore for a new high school image. So what are the points to consider when he's requesting this more expensive watch? Over to you. What would you consider in deciding, should I give it to him or should I not? So I'll help you out here.
What does he need?
Huh? What is the need? Yeah, how do you define a need? So for example, what percentage of kids in 9th grade have a watch like this? Okay, is it something that, like Taco, more or less everybody does? So it changes the balance of things of how I'm going to consider, right? Is it, and even the kids that do, is it something that is a given, or is it something that's unusual? For example, it's, grandparents came and visited and gave them a gift of a watch. Where is this coming from, and how do they get this? And also, is there added value in them having this watch? Will it last longer, given whatever they're involved in? It has more features and so on, or is it purely just a status symbol? And understand where this is coming from. And most importantly, we need to understand who we're dealing with. What about this child? This child themselves, we need to be very tuned in to that child's personality and to whether they're going through a difficult time, and therefore they can't withstand necessarily. There are a big percentage of children that do have it, and they're not one of those. They're much more of a sensitive type, and they can't. It's much more difficult. So we have to take that into account. Different children will have different levels of self-confidence and varying needs and sliding levels of ego. So we need to take that into account as well. We need to take both of those. What's going on in the classroom and in the white school, and what's going on with this child, and then put those together and say, okay, then I will determine if this is a need or if this is a want. And ultimately, if we want to help our children prioritize, then when they're faced with a want that they perceive as a need, then give them the freedom of choice. Okay? And what freedom of choice? Freedom of choice where they'll feel it in their pocket. For example, somebody I know once said to their children wanted a particular pair of trainers. So fine, you absolutely need a pair of trainers. I don't have an issue with that. If your budget is $100, right? Anything more than $100, if you want to buy it, you pay the whole thing yourself. Right? They didn't buy the pair of trainers that they wanted, which was $125. Because suddenly it switches. It depends when they're paying for it and they have to pay for it, then the priorities and the scales of needs and wants suddenly switch very, very much. And you can do this as well with our children, to give them, to empower them to make the freedom of choice in a way that they will feel it. It doesn't have to be that they pay for the whole thing. Sometimes you can say to them, you can pay the difference. Suddenly when they have to pay for it, their choices change. And if they don't, then that tells you that Taka maybe was a need, and fine, you found a way of doing it. You haven't said no, but it hasn't cost you any more. They feel it's really a need. They have the wherewithal to be able to do it. We'll come to in a minute how they can maybe afford things and so on. Okay, so that is ultimately what we need to do, is keep reminding them that they have everything, that we're going to provide them everything that they need and some of what they want, and it'll apply in life. It'll apply to shidduchim, apply to the house to buy, everything that we look at, because ultimately we'll never have everything that we want, because the more we want, the more we want. So we know that in our own life. So we need to be able to give them the chinuch to be able to already appreciate that for the rest of life. So in the next cartoon we're going to see, we're going to look at the idea of keeping down wants from a different perspective.
Sometimes a no to a child can be empowering. We can get our kids to recognize their power and use it for the public benefit. Ema said you need a new backpack, Shimmy.
Hey, look, there's a cute one with teddy bears. Teddy bears? That's fine for a little kid named Dovey, but not for me. Abba, look, that fancy new backpack is on sale. The one they've been advertising all over town. It has a zillion pockets and gadgets, and it's super cool. The sign says that it usually costs twice as much, but now it's only $10 more than the regular ones.
Will that be fair to your friends?
Why not, Abba? My friend Ruby, the one who lives in that fancy house with the marble pillars, just came to school with that backpack.
But you don't have any marbles in your pillows.
Pillars, silly, not pillows. Abba, if I come to school with that backpack, everyone in my class will be blown away.
And that's exactly why we're not going to buy it. If we do, your friends will ask their Abba to buy them the same thing for twice the price. Shimmy, the boys in your class respect you and follow your lead. Use your power to lead them to good things, not to raise the bar so people spend money they don't have. Did you see that? The backpack may have been a once-in-a-lifetime bargain, but far more valuable was the opportunity to teach Shimmy how to resist negative social pressure and exert positive pressure. I try to convey to my family that money is just a means to an end, not a way to show off or put pressure on other people. I'm really proud of Shimmy for broadcasting the same message to his class.
Okay, so here, and we've probably heard this many, many times, just because everyone has it, we may have heard it as children, just because everyone has it doesn't mean that you have to have it. And that's usually followed by an interrogation, which sometimes is very effective. I've done it with my own children, where it's like, so everyone has it, what is the everyone? How many people? So for example, who? And you don't have to do it in an uncomfortable way. So okay, that's interesting. Such as who? And then once they get to usually about 3, they start struggling. Yeah, this one, that, right? So that sometimes that sometimes does happen. That it's not like the everyone is not taka the everyone, but also different children are some children will be very happy to wear hand-me-downs and some won't. Some kids would rather go not go on the school trip, and instead of going with the backpack that is not the latest one, and so on and so forth. So we need to take all of these things into account, but we also need to try and this is where we're going to turn the tables. We need to try and empower our children to be able to and to ingrain within them to be able to have the inner strength to be able to resist peer pressure and all of those things. But here what we're doing in this cartoon next, what we're doing is we're using the idea of peer pressure and inner strength, as long as we can build them with the inner strength, by taking it a step beyond that. And it's not just a matter of not going with the flow. We also want them to realize that they have the power and very often therefore the responsibility to direct the flow for the public benefit, or at least not to join the ones who are putting on negative peer pressure. And that was the message that Shemi's father tried to get across in the cartoon. Now, when we bring this up, it's very controversial. We very often have a lot of sort of challenge and pushback on this, because this is where we say, like, what people will say, well, why is it my bit? Why do I have to be responsible about what other people are going to do, what other people are going to think? That's their problem, not my problem. If I can afford it and it's okay for me, and so then that's fine. Why should I care about what other people think? Let them deal with their issues, not me deal about my issues. But ultimately, Mesila, we do believe that we do bear a responsibility for our actions and the effects of our actions on people around us, and we care about people. So that's therefore this is something that we feel very strongly about. And it is true always, and especially nowadays, that when many members are in our community, more than really should be, are in financial distress, and more than you actually probably know about and are aware of. But there are lots of people who are struggling and are trying to sort of, as we say in England, keep up with the Joneses. I don't know what the equivalent is in America, but I'm sure you know what I mean. And that's a big challenge, and we do have a responsibility. It's not like the old days where there was like the Gavir in the village, and he lived one way, and there was the common folk, and everybody else who lived a much lower standard. But today it doesn't really work like that anymore, and many of our friends and our relatives and our neighbours who look just like us feel compelled to keep up. There's a certain image they need to keep up with, and even though they're really struggling, and will go into tremendous debt because of it, and it's a big challenge. And therefore, if we think about other people, when we're doing things, when we're making simchas, and when we're buying cars, and when we're redecorating or whatever it may be, or buying clothing, then what we're doing is we're relieving a great burden for those other people in Klal Yisrael. And as I say, it is controversial and very challenging, but this is something that we do feel very, very strong. And I'm not saying it's easy. This is not, as I said before, it's tough to do that. We work very hard to get to a certain economic level, to get to a certain level of affordability, and we feel I can afford it. So why not? I worked hard, I can afford it. What's wrong? It is very challenging. There's no question about it. And you could say let them deal with their issues. And parents very often will say to us, shouldn't kids and people in general know that there are different needs and wants? And yes, they not different needs, but different needs for different people. And children will usually learn that within their own families, within their own siblings. Not everybody has the same needs, and we need to educate them, certainly internally as well, about that sort of idea. Each child will need different medical, there'll be different medical issues, different whatever it may be. So I'm sure every parent will acknowledge that to turn around and say everybody has to have the same thing is not healthy as well. We need to be able to relate to each of our children in a different way, and certainly within Klal Yisrael that's absolutely true. But in a social arena, so that principle itself does hold, and therefore people say, well, in that case, if they see at home that different people get different things that different siblings do, then why not out there in communities? So we have, we can do differently to other people. Why should I worry about other people? But in the social arena, it works very, very differently, and we want to be mechanech them that when that child introduces something, as like we saw in the cartoon, when they introduce something that it's not a need, sometimes it's not fair on other people, because we want them to empower them to create, things that are healthy, and not create needs for others that are not healthy and going to land them into trouble. And we can't just sort of say, let everybody else deal with their issues and it's not my issues. But we have an achrayus. Kol Yisrael are even zeh. We have an achrayus to each other, and there's no question that these things can have a big negative impact on other people. What we do can have an impact in the social arena, what other people feel they need to do as well. So we talked about wants and needs, and for example, a kid walks into a class and 3/4 of the class has something, right? Say a new kind of binder, whatever it may be, and maybe that's a need. The truth is, I don't know, but whatever it may be, it's something that they want, and even then, you might teach them sometimes, no, you have to make do without, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about here. But what if nobody has it yet, right? Nobody has a particular item, and your kid brings it into the classroom. So what's going to happen over time is they're effectively starting a new trend, and they're raising the bar. And if it's something that's expensive, it's something that costs a little bit more, and then the first one, over time there's one kid has it, so a few kids are going to have it, and over time it becomes something which, what the effect that's had is that maybe half the class could afford it, 3/4 of the class could afford it, 90% of the class, the parents could afford it, but 10% couldn't. But those 10% of those parents are not going to send their kids without it. So now they feel pressured. They have to get their kids this binder because now everybody has it. And where did it come from? One kid that decided he was going to he wanted a new binder because he fancied it, and the parents could afford it, and they sent them to school with that binder or whatever. You can translate binder to whatever it is. You get the point, right? You with me on this? Yeah, we getting some nods. Yeah. Okay. If you disagree with anything, please just challenge me. Try.
This week's parsha.
Right.
So that's a clear indication. Part of
responsibility to see the suffering of others on the impact. Yeah, correct. Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't. Or it's not so overt here. It's a bit more. It's not so overt. It's not so clear. But if we think about it, we say when we're saying yes, what's the knock-on effect? Even if we can afford it, and it's not an issue over here of no, it's not about no. This is about saying yes. And what's the effect? And therefore, it's about sharing these strategies and these tools with them to say what's going to be the impact of this. And it's going back to different aspect of needs and wants. And also, it's not only what we do; it's also what we say and how we communicate our opinions. Take the following scenario, for example. So Yossi, we're back to Yossi, and Yossi's parents want to make him a simple bar mitzvah. Some of his friends have simple bar mitzvahs, some of his friends have more lavish bar mitzvahs, and he would like really, very much like a sort of one on the fancier scale. And what they do is they went to Mesila and they went to one and they said, right, we're going to empower you. We say, look, this you can use if you want to something a little bit more. You can use some of your bar mitzvah money. I'm not suggesting that you do this. I'm just saying, they're giving you a scenario. You can use some of your bar mitzvah money to be able to have something more than what we would do ourselves. Okay? And he's now, as they say, mitlabet. Now that he has to pay for it, he says, okay, let me consider everything. He goes to his friend's bar mitzvahs, and he goes to one of his friend's bar mitzvahs, which is very, very basic. And he's there, and another friend turns round and says, it doesn't really feel like a bar mitzvah here. It's like, there's not really much happening. There isn't much here. It doesn't feel like a bar mitzvah. At that moment, Yossi makes up his mind, because he's not going to he's not going to do the same low level bar mitzvah. Now he absolutely wants a lavish bar mitzvah. So his friend doesn't really appreciate. He doesn't know what Yossi's thinking. He doesn't know that what he's just said has and the impact that it's had on what a person is going to spend, what a person is going to do. So we have to. He had no idea, and we have to think about and consider a little bit more about what it is that we say and so on. So positive peer pressure. What's positive peer pressure? Is doing things that has a positive effect on others. So say there's a bike-a-thon and everybody's having their bikes, and there's a couple of kids who have brand new bikes, but they also have they have older bikes as well. So positive peer pressure could be taking not the fancy new bike, because when you're in a group setting, and just taking so that people shouldn't feel uncomfortable. Whoever has whatever bikes you have, they'll feel comfortable. It doesn't matter. Even the ones that have fancy bikes use other second-hand bikes and so on, and those things that we can do. Or for example, two brothers. Levi hears his brother Kalman telling a friend, sorry, I really can't loan with you on Monday nights. That's fine. So his brother says to him, well, why didn't you just tell him that we go out every Monday night with Bobby and Zadie? So what's Kalman says is because positive peer pressure is, I'm not going to say that because maybe they can't afford to do that. So how does it make them feel if that's what I'm saying? And then, so it's those sorts of things where we can have positive peer pressure. We need to try and be mechanech our children and share with them the other side of the needs and wants, and the things that we do and things that we don't do. And the peer pressure that we may feel is to be the leaders in a positive way, to be able to share those things. And ultimately, as I said earlier, one of the things is it has to come from us. We need to model that approach as well, right? We can't tell our children that they need to, we can't encourage and educate our children that they should make do with the, unbranded shoes when we ourselves are wearing branded clothes the whole time. That's just not going to work. It's not going to work. So it's about being a dogma as well in the way that we do it. And in short, we don't only resist peer pressure. What we try and do is go a step and beyond, and and what we say is no to ourselves is to avoid creating peer pressure as well. And that's another way of saying no, and it doesn't stop there, because once we sensitize ourselves to caring about Klal Yisrael And then ultimately what happens is we instill within them a value, and a minute of value, which means when they grow up, then they care about others. Those are the kids that are becoming the Askonim, and those are the kids that are becoming the Chanchim, and those are the kids that are reaching out to help others and creating chesed organization and volunteering and so on, because they're so used to, from a very young age, thinking about others, caring about others, the impact that I have, and what I say and what I do about others, and not making them feel uncomfortable and so on and so forth. And therefore they recognize this is an integral part, integral Torah value about the way in which we live our lives. So let's go back to Shimi and see the next strategy that he learns. But 6 altogether, 2 more.
Sometimes the way we say no is not right now. Sometimes it's you have to wait until you earn it. And even today, kids are able to delay gratification, earn, and save for the future.
Abba, look, they have the new Rubik's Cube, and it's on sale for only $6. It's so worth it. It's in a vase, leave it on the shelf. And anyway, Shimmy's buying so much stuff. This is just one little game for me. Please, can you buy it, Abba? Please, Abba?
Forget it. Abba's not gonna let.
Actually, Dovey, if you really want the Rubik's Cube, you can have it.
What?
But not today. If you want it, you'll have to wait until you earn it.
You mean I can get a job tomorrow instead of going to school?
No, but you can earn it other ways. Starting tomorrow, every time you go to sleep on time and wake up at the first ring of the alarm clock, you'll get a star. When you have 12 stars, you can have your prize, a Rubik's Cube.
Hey, that's sort of like when you paid me $1 for each time I raked the leaves, so I could buy the new Rebbe Mendel book for $10. In the end, when I had $9, you gave me the last one as a freebie. Remember?
That's right. And Dovey, if you stick it out, I'll give you the last star for free too.
That will take you almost 2 weeks.
I can do it. Wow, I can't wait. I can wait.
You know, in the past, I'd sometimes find myself saying no automatically. But you have to learn to listen to your kids. Sometimes what you see as an unjustified demand is important for this child. You can take that demand, like I just did, and turn it into a hands-on opportunity to practice earning, saving, and delayed gratification. Even a little fellow like Dovey can do it. And learning how to delay gratification is not just about money. It's a valuable asset in every aspect of our lives.
So there's another way to say yes by saying a no, okay? Or another way not to say no, another strategy how don't just say no. And saying yes, you can have a delayed gratification. I'm sure you can all relate to that, sure you can understand it. In the past it was very, very different. Kids it was very common to be, boys to be raking, to be snow, well, not snow, they're meant to be snow, right, to shovel the snow and to rake the leaves from the path, and the kids and girls to be doing babysitting, sometimes the other way around as well. I'm not judging who, but generally that's what happens. Today, for various reasons, to do with safety, to do with, parents feel uncomfortable with just leaving their kids either out to go to, to out in the streets to be working, or even sometimes because babysitting. So sometimes it can be more challenging, but the principle is still there. The idea that and to be encouraged. And sometimes also parents feel they don't want them to be having to earn money to be able to spend money themselves. They want to provide for themselves, and psychologists can go into a lot of detail as to where that comes from and how they were brought up, and the previous generation, and all those sorts of things. And previous generation, by the way, were very good at this, very, very good at delayed gratification. Like, it was quite normal to wait a very long time to save up till you got something, a decade, sometimes 2 decades, because they just couldn't afford it. There wasn't the money available, there wasn't the credit available. It wasn't there. Nowadays it's a whole different world, and it's much more challenging. But the principle still is the same. The strategy still is there, and the tool still is there, and that is about the delayed gratification and waiting to be able to earn it, and a way to be able to not say no, but to say yes, but yes, you can have it, but you'll have to earn it, you'll have to save for it, or whatever it may be. Sometimes it's helped by family, whether it's an uncle, an aunt, or a grandparent comes and gives them a little gift and money. They can use that money, so it gets a bit quicker. But there's ways in which that they can earn the money, and we need to enable them and create those. We can't just say to them, yes, you can earn it and save for it, if you don't give them the opportunities to be able to save money. So we do need to think of ways to do it. Sometimes it's within the home, sometimes outside of the home, whatever it may be. But that's certainly a very powerful strategy to be able to help them, again, not just with money, but in life in general. And it's much more challenging today in the instant world that we live in, instant communication. microwave meals, etc., etc. And it's difficult, and that's what I said in the beginning. I'm not saying these things are easy, but the principle and the value certainly hasn't changed. We can still do it. We know, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with the marshmallow experiment that was done in terms of asking a group of kids. You can look it up. You'll see it was an experiment that they followed them later on. You can either have 2 marshmallows, 1 marshmallow now, or if you wait, you can have 2 marshmallows. And the kids they tracked the kids who waited and for be able to have 2 marshmallows later on. I think it was, I can't remember exact numbers, and they saw that they were much more successful in life later on. It was quite incredible, actually. You can look it up. The marshmallow is very well known. The marshmallow experiment. And so that that principle is there, and we want to try and be able to give them that opportunity in life. They will become much more successful if they learn to wait for things, to save for things, and so on and so forth. And the truth is that children are born with a certain nature. For some it's easier to wait, and for others it's much more of a challenge. And we need to be in tune with our children as well, each as an individual. And there's lots of different personality types. There are those, for example, there's the Schnorrer. Right? This is not a judgment, chas v'shalom, but it's the idea that he'll say, "Look, my friends always have extra money, so if I need something, I'll just ask them, and they're always happy to give." Or there's the one that's the borrower. He'll say, go to a friend and say, "Look, I need something. Can I borrow some money from you, and I'll pay you back?" And there's the coper. The coper is the one who says, if I don't have the money, then I'm not going to spend any, and until I have more. And you know what? It's not the end of the world. I'll cope. I don't have it now, I won't have it until fine. And then there's the planner, the one who says, I know, I'm going to need this and this amount of money in this week, so I'm going to plan for it, and I'm going to line up jobs to be able to save the money, because that week I want to be able to I want to go away in the sun, whatever it may be. And then there's the saver. Every time he gets money, half of it put away and half of it will spend. So there's different personality types, and we need to understand our children's personality types and be able to relate to them in that way. But in all of those cases, we can help them, and it's a muscle. It's a muscle. The more that we practice this, the more that we will be able to get used to this principle of delayed gratification, and saying there are strategies, ways in which you can have it, but you'll need to be able to earn it, and you'll need to wait for it until you do. And again, as I said in the beginning, as Yidden, we're very familiar with this, right? We have Shabbos. Right? Shabbos is things are muktzah, you have to wait. You want to be able to enjoy that toy, you have to wait till after Shabbos. Kashrus, right? You want to be able to have that coffee after your fleshika meal, but have to wait for it. So these are principles that apply throughout our lives, they're sometimes used to, and so on. So just to finish off quickly in the last, I know we're going on quite a bit, but the last couple of tools.
Saying no because you're frustrated is never a good idea. Kids can learn to reframe their requests when they don't get that automatic no. It's getting late. Let's head straight for home.
Hey, I almost forgot. Tomorrow is the trip for the end of the summer learning program. I've got to buy new hiking shoes. My other ones are from the Middle Ages, and I refuse to be seen in it. And besides, I need tons of nosh and $20 for the trip.
I am feeling totally badgered. I'm just going to take them home, and that's that. Wait, I'm the adult here. Let's focus on the issue and reframe. Slow down! What language are you speaking, Shimmy? I don't understand a word you're saying.
It's English, Abba. He hardly knows any Yiddish, but I know tons.
That's not what Abba means. What do you mean, Abba?
I heard a lot of words like I've got to, I refuse, I need. If something's important to you, I want to hear about it, but that's not the language I understand. Why don't you try again?
Oh, I get it. Abba, I just remembered that there was a trip tomorrow, and it costs $20. Satsik! Do you think you could please give me the $20 for the trip? I'd really appreciate it.
Ah, now I hear you. Yes, you may have the $20. Was there something else you wanted to ask?
My hiking shoes are worn down, and they're sort of old-fashioned. I was wondering, would this maybe be a good time to buy new shoes?
It's a little late now for boot shopping. And besides, it's not on the list. When we get home, we can take a look at the shoes and decide what to do. After supper, we'll pick up the nosh. And Shimmy, I'm glad we're speaking the same language now.
Thanks a lot, Abba.
How do you say nosh in Yiddish?
Isn't that something? I didn't slap down that automatic no and managed to take the edge off Shimmy's tone. I helped him communicate clearly and respectfully so that we could focus on the issue. Proper communication is a skill that goes way beyond knowing how to ask a parent to shell out money. It's the building block of every future relationship in life.
So another general tool for life, which we apply to money. I just want to make one caveat about what I said before about earning, delayed gratification. It's important that children feel that they don't have to earn everything. There's also times where we give them something without earning. We need to find opportunities to give them things and say, just because we want to and we love them and so on. So it's not, no extreme is good. Okay, but in terms of this, expressing needs effectively, very, very important. The magic word here is reframing. Reframing, and not to react, and it's difficult. We have to work on ourselves. Sometimes we sort of react because of they spoke in a certain way. We suddenly become kids, right? We react in that way. They spoke. No, you're not having it. No, we need to hold ourselves, work on ourselves, and help them to reframe how it is that they express it. In our junior high school curriculum, again, we have these. We give kids pointers as to how to express their needs respectfully and effectively. So, for example, I'll give you some examples. So things that we say to them, what not to say, is like, you promised, or you never buy me anything, or everyone has one. Our family never does anything fun, and so on. So what do they say? We say, okay, so this is maybe, for example, to make requests, not demands. It's all about how we speak, to offer to participate in some way, in whatever way they can. Explain why it's important. Explain why I feel this is important for me. And again, we say it doesn't mean that means it will be a yes, but you've got a better chance, and there's no difference to our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Now, if we come to ask Hashem and we're bringing something within the way that we speak and so on, it's very, very different. Same thing with our children, and avoid saying, we say to them, avoid saying you this, you that, and whatever it is. Also choose a good time to ask. The timing is very, very important. Not just like half an hour before Shabbos or things like that. And also think before we ask, do we really need it? And that we're trying to educate the children. So that's also another strategy in terms of how we can do. So let's just review, and we'll finish off with the last one. The alternative so far that we've had to know that we offer, so far is, number one, we discussed the option of the structured independence, limited autonomy, giving our children that ability to understand that the resources are limited, so that they learn to say no to themselves. That's the point that we're trying to get to. We also spoke about teaching our children to prioritize and realize that saying yes to one thing means saying no to something else. We taught them that sometimes they should choose to say no to their social pressures. That's also the positive, to apply positive peer pressure, and to spare their friends the pain that might come when they're creating this peer pressure as well. That sort of sense of responsibility. We spoke just now about saying later instead of no, so yes but not now, and so on, by offering them ways to earn, to save up, or simply, well, not simply actually, but to delay the gratification. And we saw how all of these techniques are a lot bigger than saying no to a particular demand. They're actually tools for life, all of them. We just apply them to the area of money, and we can also apply them back. Once they get used to the area of money, they can apply it on. So, but sometimes, just sometimes, and that's why we title it, don't just say no. Sometimes we have to say no. There are times where we do. This is the final clip, and we'll finish off with that.
Sometimes you have to say no. And when you're really decisive, your kids will learn to accept the no without trying to manipulate or pressure you.
Uncle, look! They have this amazing pair of binoculars on sale for just $49.99.
Sorry, Shimmy, we're not buying binoculars.
But Abba, it's such a bargain.
No, Shimmy, $50 is a lot of money.
But we'll be able to use it for other trips too, and besides, everyone in my class is going to have one on this trip. Hey, if everyone will have one, maybe you can look from one side while they look from the other side. Silly. Then all I'll see is my friend's nose, not the gorgeous view.
I'm sorry, Shimmy. I know it's disappointing for you, but there are some things in life that we just have to swallow.
Abba, swallow binoculars? Too big. It'll hurt. That's not what Abba meant, Dovey. He means that there's nothing to talk about.
Now, how about an ice cream cone for each of you to top off the big shopping day?
Really, Abba? Do you mean it? Of course Abba means it. When Abba says no, it's no. And when he says yes, it's yes. And if he says yes again, does that mean we get 2 scoops?
Do you have a guilt trip every time you need to put your foot down and say no? Think again. Granting kids the gift of no is a gift for life. There will always be no's in life. And teaching that to our kids early on means they'll be more equipped to deal with later challenges in a strong and healthy way. Shimmy just built up his coping muscles for dealing with no's in the future. The way I see it, saying no gently and effectively is an art form. Learning to say no to kids' demands in a non-confrontational way takes practice and skill. But your relationship with your kids will be transformed, and you will have given them real tools for dealing with money challenges and all challenges for the rest of their lives. Last but not least, you can focus on teaching your family the genuine Torah perspective on money and spending. Money is a means to an end and a tool for avodas Hashem, not the center of our lives or the proof of our value. So that's the scoop, which reminds me, anyone joining us for ice cream?
So, almost ashamed to sort of not end on that because I was quite foul, but let's just develop that a little bit more and understand it. So some parents find themselves saying no the whole time, or even more than they would like. So hopefully what I've helped to do is to give you strategies to be able to not have to say no the whole time, but to have the same effect, the same outcome of saying no, but in a different way, a way that's healthy, a way that is a way that teaches them chinuch and helps them with tools for life and makes us feel better in terms of their relationship as well. But sometimes we do have to say no, and then that, if it's not always no, they'll know, as it says over, as we've seen over here, they'll know that when they say no, it means no, and so on. And the reasons why we may say no are not necessarily so relevant, or why we may feel that we want to say no the whole time is not necessarily relevant. But as we discussed, life sometimes, talking about tool for life, sometimes life says no to people, right? It's not that we're saying no, and if we never say no to our children, then they'll never be able to they'll never learn how to cope when life says no to them, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says no to them about things that they sometimes want, and sometimes that they need. But that, as parents, we want to reassure them, give them the security. You'll always have everything that you need and some that you want, but life doesn't always work out like that. And it's a really powerful tool when we, and I don't want to sort of, we've had 5 alternatives to know, but it's important to understand the 6th is equally as important. That is, that our times where we say no, we have to be clear and we have to be firm. This is no, and that way, as I say, when life, for whatever reason, Hashem determines that that's going to be no, then they'll be able to, they'll have the coping mechanism and say, okay, this time it's a no, and that's and they'll be able to do it. And so, as we've seen here, hopefully I've been able to help you in strategies and tools, not tell you what to do, but share with you some things to think about, some ways to be able to communicate with your children. And some parents say, look, I don't want my children to have the slightest inkling of our financial difficulties, or that we might not be able to afford something. When we're talking about saying no, as I said earlier, because we choose to say no even if we can't afford it, that's a very healthy, much healthier conversation. But sometimes we say no because we can't afford it. We can't afford it, and it's not a need, it's a want, and we're saying no. And so some parents might feel, I just don't want to do that. I don't want my kids to feel like I can't afford something. So it's not necessarily about the details. Yes, it's true, don't necessarily have to go into the details, but the idea that we can't afford something is also okay. And sometimes we have to say, no, we can't, because we can't. It's a lot of money, we can't afford that. It's a want, it's not a need. If you really need it, then I have to find the money. But it's not a need. We've determined now already that we've had all the other things that we've done, but this is a want. And remember, always the mantra will say, look, I always provide you everything that you need, and some of what you want, this is not one of them. It's not a need, and it's not one of the wants that I'm going to be able to find you. I can't afford it. And it's okay for children to be able to hear that, and healthy for children to be able to hear that. It's just not necessarily healthy for them to hear that every single time. And that's the balance that we're trying to strike, and that the occasional no will be much more effective and much more powerful. And the fact is that knowing money is limited, and seeing how the family and the child themselves can manage and be happy gives the child a sense of security, and it gives them the strength